This work session of the Germantown Municipal School Board is now in session. Our first item on the agenda is Student Services Report. Ms. Dodd.
Good afternoon. I know you're used to seeing Mr. Bland. Unfortunately, he's ill, so I'm kind of filling in for him. The first
we're having mic issues. Okay, so that's just a TSBA requirement based on new statutes. do the others, you can.
Yes, transfers within the system, 6.206. The change on this is we're scratching out parents or guardians, I'm sorry, it's on page 2, line 9. And we're scratching out June 6th and changing it to June 15th each year to notify parents. That also allows a longer time of notification, allows the high school, if you have summer school, if they need to revoke any transfers or anything, it just kind of gives us that extra buffer of time when they're in the 15th.
Yes.
But it seems like we're changing dates.
So we're just, there,
And
yes.
no, but I'm just saying, should we say maybe mid-June? I know parents want a specific date, but every year we can have to change.
We could put mid-June, we were just,
I'm not that I'm against
yes.
changing the date every year, but it just seems like,
Because it depends on when it falls, I guess.
yeah,
I guess
yeah.
you could say honor before the 15th. I think if there's not a date when you will get confirmation for sure, if you've heard nothing, sometimes that's good news.
Right.
And people might continue to wonder, has mid-June actually passed and are we in?
I just didn't know if there was a way, because
So-
we don't have to change the date every
I
year.
agree.
that's right.
I think honor before June 15th gives us the
Because that way
flexibility we
if it
need.
falls- If it falls on Saturday, people think they'll get contacted Friday or Monday.
Right.
But that just needs to be set. Honor before the 15th. The next policy is the same thing. It's on page 2, line 5. It's the same verbiage for notifying June 6th to the 15th, so honor before. Right. The next one is 6.304, student discrimination, harassment, bullying, cyberbullying, and intimidation. The change in this policy is on page 3, line 22 and line 25. The previous policy listed July of each year, and so we're changing it to August of each year because we typically have the board meetings in August and not July. So we're just changing the policy to match. I want to go too fast. Yep.
Does it need to be presented to us before that? Or, I'm just making sure that
No, it doesn't, right. Now, this one, that's an Office of Civil Rights report in the state, so it doesn't have to be certified by the board, it doesn't vote for a vote. It's just, hey, have we
Here's the
got it?
data.
Complete this?
Is it there? Yeah, prepare a report.
Yes, because some of them do require board approval.
It was July. Okay. I'm just going through this. The next one is suicide prevention, 6.305. And the change is on page 2, line 23. And in this policy, it is changing to discuss reentry. Basically, Ms. Law and Mr. Bland was talking, and they want to have a transition plan in place to reenter, so that they can transition out of whatever facility they're in and come back into class.
Should we verify that, to discuss reentry, sounds like we're deciding whether or not you get to reenter, to create a reentry plan?
Maybe.
That would be, discussion.
I wondered about that too, just on whether there's, deciding whether or not they can enter.
No, ma'am. It's to
Because I
provide
mean,
support,
we can't
yes.
say, we can't say, you can't come back.
We can say discuss a reentry plan.
Discuss a reentry plan,
Develop, yeah.
develop.
Yeah, so let's go with to develop a reentry. If everybody's okay.
We had a couple of comments around the appropriate. Just because I think.
I think it's and student
how do you want to change it?
What if we need, if appropriate, to go in front of the student?
Well.
No, and student, they're meeting with all the three,
If you,
right?
if you scratch the comma after parent guardian, and then put and student if appropriate in parentheses,
That's right. That's fine.
Yes.
Because that first comma is not necessarily there.
that's right.
So scratch
To
out this
develop
comma.
a reentry plan.
And we'll make those,
I'm sorry, I just.
No, no, you're great.
I noticed it and I thought.
We'll make those
It makes it seem as though the discussion may or may not be appropriate, and we don't want that either.
that's right.
So this goes in parentheses.
To develop a reentry
Mr.
plan.
Fisher?
Yes. Yeah, which goes in. There comes the thing, yeah, to put down. And parentheses is here. And okay, good.
Okay.
To
We'll make those adjustments. Ms. Fisher is,
Student wellness, okay, make sure we. We're making an adjustment here to just clarify a little bit more on the coordinated school health efforts to continue wellness throughout our district. We're very happy to be building healthy school teams. Many of you have been active members of our PTA and PTOs in the past and been a part of those meetings. Some of the language that we're eliminating is just the Healthy Germantown Committee. What we found when we introduced that language, our goals were going to be to kind of have an additional meeting outside of the school, and it's kind of broke apart to where we're not actually directly impacting the policies and decisions, more as adopting community activities. So what we did was bring that back to just the school locations that we're going to look to review to make sure those implementing policies and practices as we see from the district is done at the individual school, and then, you know, guides, policy, practices for implementing, say, walk across Tennessee, things like that, to give you an example. And that's that motion. Yeah. And still, if there's ever a conversation about the active members of that, there's still, the list of those are still very much the same, listed underneath assistant principal, public, students, and so on. None of that has changed.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. I really enjoyed your document.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
Just a small revision. It's policy financial management 2.4000 regarding our revenues. On page 2 of 3, lines 1 and 2, just adding language approved by the Tennessee Comptroller's Office regarding vending machine revenue. And basically that revenue received from sales to teachers can now fund teacher morale accounts.
Can we edit that?
Yeah, it should be, yeah, I mean, I just saw that.
yes, after you.
How many more chips do you want?
But that is it. Then you have the legal reference in footnote 7.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones.
Miscellaneous fiscal year 2019-20 budget amendments numbers 2 and 3. Jones?
You want it, Mr. Jones?
Yeah, we just had to get to it. First, budget amendment number 2. Basically, we're just transferring costs for a part-time employee from regular education teaching assistants to other salaries in the office of the principal account. It's just to properly classify that person's salary. No.
Just changing location.
And amendment
Which position is it?
It's a part-time employee, I believe, special needs.
And budget amendment number 3.
Number 3, there are 2 sections. First, we're appropriating the insurance recoveries received as a result of the flood damage at Houston High School. So we're appropriating those dollars for expenditures. And then we received the $1.5 million in funding from the city of Germantown for the boiler project. So we're appropriating those funds.
Yes, we did
Yeah,
$10,000 for
10,000.
deductible. Yes, ma'am.
And then they covered pretty much everything.
Everything after that?
Yeah.
And how is that being dispersed? To school groups that might have been affected, how would it be affected?
I can answer that one if you like, Kevin.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
sure.
The only group that was affected, other than things like gym floors, was the band. That was the one claim that got denied, was band equipment and things of that nature. So the district is actually just covering those funds from the items that were lost through the band program. The other big losses were the varsity gym floor, the PE gym floor, flooring and other items in the auditorium, and those are all just being covered directly out of district funds. The only program affected was band.
And wrestling match.
And wrestling mats as well.
Are the wrestling mats being?
The wrestling mats were covered through insurance, the band items were not, so we're just covering them. The district is. It was just over $10,000 for the band items. The wrestling mats, I think, were around $22,000, but that was covered by insurance.
What about the R20 project?
Covered by insurance? No, we replaced.
Go ahead and replace it, because they were planning.
I know.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, we replaced.
We're gonna get them cleaned again.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Wanted to have it all worked out.
I was sitting beside you.
Okay. The next item, Mr. Shannon, is school fees and activity costs for 2019-2020 school year.
And the changes are highlighted in yellow for you. Just a couple comments. On activity cost, Farmington eliminated several of those. And at Houston High School, the spring sports, those will appear on your January schedule for approval.
So the Houston High School PSAT, the $20,
Mhm.
is that, sorry, I'm on the wrong page. Page 2. That's highlighted, is that
That's,
for all juniors or
I think sophomores have the ability to take that over.
sophomores have the option, so juniors required to take
No,
it?
this is all
So
optional.
it's the option is the $20 per quarter. Okay. That one. I noticed that Houston Middle School has an activity now. $15 or instruction fee. Or I think they call it an activity fee, instruction fee. Riverdale does not have that instructional fee.
no, these were all reported by the principals.
So I just found it interesting. The one middle school has an activity fee, the other does not. The elementary school, 2 of the 4 have instructional fees of $30.
Yeah, I mean, that's usually left up to the discretion of the principal and the teacher that's involved in the, I guess, budget development process.
Okay. I guess I struggle less with the elementary because they use a lot more consumable materials. And sometimes they get weekly readers or whatever, and that's in that cost. The $15, the background is student incentives and printing costs. Printing costs for what exactly? I know summer programs and things like that. So if they're putting additional funds towards that, and another school who is having to do the exact same thing is not, I want to make sure that everybody's looking at that opportunity the same. Absolutely. Yeah, there could be, right. But mainly making sure that people who are paying it know what it's for and. Right.
And then one other thing I caught, and I don't know if it's because it's my accident, and I wrote this check for something. The band fee is not accurate. It's gone up this year, $725.
Which school, Houston High is in Home?
It was what?
It was $625 last year, it's $725.
Page two.
I'll follow up with Mr. Taylor.
Page two.
All right, she'll pay for it.
Your children, you get the bonus.
Anything else?
Do we want to move on the agenda as amended, or just put it on the agenda as adjusted?
Yeah. Or
Yeah, I would put it
as amended?
as is, and then we'll come back with those two amendments to find out.
So we'll just come back next month with just those
The
two line
amendments.
items, potentially. Okay.
The next item is the school audit contract for 2019-20.
And the state requires the board to approve this by the end of September for the upcoming school year. So we are putting that in place, asking for your approval. It's about a small increase, about $680 in the fee, total $17,000.
Stop loss insurance renewal 2019-20. Ms. Stratton. Thank you, Mr. James.
Good evening. It's a stop loss renewal time. So Ms. Edelman and I have been working with Health Cost Solutions, our stop loss third-party administrator, as well as Brittany Sprouting and Bob Shoup with ESP for they're our medical consultants to review this year's stop loss renewal bid from American Fidelity. And just to kind of give you a little background information, our stop loss insurance helps protect the district from any catastrophic claims that might occur throughout the school year. Currently, we have around 449 members participating on our medical insurance plan. That makes up active GMSD employees, their dependents, as well as some retirees. So our stop loss insurance is going to kick in when a member has over $115,000 in medical insurance claims. And after that threshold amount is reached, then American Fidelity, our stop loss insurance carrier, will reimburse the districts for any medical claims that are incurred moving forward. So this year's bid, there was an increase of about 19% or $90,000, and it had to do with active members. We have 5 active members that have hit that $115,000 threshold. Last year, we didn't have any members. So our stop loss insurance has been very helpful in protecting the district this year, but it did come with an increase moving forward. There was some administrative cost increase with Health Cost Solutions, but we did know that back in the spring when we approved, Health Cost Solutions as our party administrator, so we were able to budget for that. as well. So after talking to Health Cost Solutions and Bob and Brittany, we do feel that this is a fair renewal, and we are recommending to continue with American Fidelity starting September 1st.
And for those individuals, there were some people with significant health issues and costs. And it's not done either, because, we have that claims lag that typically happens with our health insurance. So you know that when they have a major incident, they're still paying for procedures and bills that are coming in for those individuals.
Item is the land exchange agreement for Germantown Park and land currently on the Horseshoe Elementary School property.
Good evening. All right, so I'll take through a little bit of the history of how we got to where we are this evening. For a few years now, we've been engaged in discussions with the city of Germantown regarding needs for additional space, particularly Houston Levy Park, primarily for softball fields, but also for additional parking, arts and athletic space, just to expand the footprint at Houston High School. The needs there, as we've talked about, and I won't go through them extensively, but softball, again, is primary. After that, we do have teams that are practicing in our gyms until...
Yes.
Oh, sure. Sure. We do have some teams that are practicing in our gyms until well in the evening. We have gyms, we have teams that are sharing gym space. We have groups that are currently using Grace Evangelical Church. In addition, the softball team uses it primarily for their home, but we also, our basketball teams practice over at Grace Evangelical Church regularly, and we're very thankful for that, for their partnership. It's in our master facilities plan that one of our primary goals is to have all of our student athletes practicing and competing on the campuses that they attend. That was one of the goals that was set. So when we look at where we would like the softball field to go, obviously Houston High School would be the ideal place because that meets that strategic goal. The city of Germantown, they have identified the need. One of their big needs is a water tower, and they have identified the land that's on the east side of Forest Hill Irene as the place to put that. As you recall, in March 19 of 2019, our board approved an MOU that would secure just softball space. That was really the gist of it. And so that was done in March of 2019. In June 11th of 2019, we received a land exchange agreement from the city of Germantown that would transfer ownership of the properties, and then it also kind of stipulated how the properties are to be used by each party. That was sent to the board on June 12th. We sought board feedback, administrative feedback, as well as legal feedback on that agreement, and one of the there were changes made, but one of the general consensus items was that we needed to divide those agreements into two separate agreements to make the land exchange a clean land for land, and then we looked at a land use agreement as a separate agreement. So we worked on that process. We've got the amended agreements where they have been split into two agreements, and those agreements were sent to the board July 30th with the intentions really of putting this on the work session agenda for the board to discuss at this meeting. So that is where we are at this time. I'm really going to turn it over to the board for discussion, and Mr. Manuel, I'll be happy to try to answer any questions that you may have, or Ms. Estes as well, because she's played a significant role. So at this time, we're going to turn it over to the board for discussion. Land exchange, yes, ma'am.
At the top of the deed, it says GMS
ability to do with it what we need. I just like the lack of control of property that close to our school. Just like it there. I also just like that I feel like something's being withheld in order to make that happen. In terms of exchange. I mean, if we go back farther than Mr. Packard went, we sent the facilities usage agreement in the December timeframe that was never addressed either. I mean, you mentioned the
I think we have made 2 attempts to facilitate the gaining of access and use for a softball field. The first attempt was just for usage, and it went nowhere. And so the next step that we took was we created an MOU when we passed it by our board that asked for the property itself, just the property for the softball field. And to my understanding, the alderman never saw that. I found that disappointing. And then we get this agreement, and to my understanding, the aldermen have never seen it.
The one that we slayed?
I guess my concern is, why are we approving potentially or not approving potentially something from the city before they have even, that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen have not even addressed yet? I struggle with that a little bit. Why, there is less benefit to us than to the city in this agreement right here.
That one. Now, the one that Ms. Estes did, I think it was more equitable on the land exchange agreement,
Well, I mean, all she was supposed to, all you were doing was dividing out what was in the document.
Actually,
for the most
I
part.
divided
Significantly
I divided the 2 documents, but one thing I wanted to preserve in there, in the original document that was sent, the reimbursement for the
For the
pipe
pipe.
wasn't gonna happen until, I mean, that was like the last thing that was
Right,
gonna happen.
right.
And I don't understand, I didn't even know about that till it just showed up in the agreement.
Right.
So, you know, I don't know why there isn't just a check paid, okay?
Right.
So that's number 1 on that. But number 2, what concerned me on the original agreement and so there are modifications in these documents to address that, is a lot of this, you know, until you get a survey and you can say, okay, here's an easement going here,
Right.
or here's, this tree's got to come down here. It's very, very difficult, and y'all may be better at this, but I have a real hard time just saying, oh, I think that'll be fine, we'll worry about where that easement's going later. And so, you know, even though, if the purpose of this is to come to an agreement on where we ultimately want it to be headed, then that's what we're doing. But this agreement does give y'all still approval opportunities that once everything is drawn out, if you can say, whoa, this is going to cut off our access to this corner, or this is crazy, or this is creating a safety, whatever the reasons, or you all might say it's the greatest thing since whatever. But the original agreement that was one agreement covering both land
Right.
and exchange and use, I didn't think just had enough protection as far as y'all being in a position to stay in the process significantly. And that was where my biggest concern came in.
Now, I noticed throughout the agreement, you put several clauses in there that if a mutual agreement was
Yeah.
not reached, the whole thing
Then,
was
then,
void.
was
then we
voided.
just,
Right.
we go back and start over somewhere else.
I think for me, the original agreement was very upsetting
Yes.
for me. The lack of a timeline was one of my major
issues when I read it. The number of acres was a surprise, being on the site selection committee. The city wanting land, wanting for what they wanted it for public utilities was no secret, has never been a secret. But at that time, the conversation was for far less, although the committee did discuss, would the city at any point be interested in putting a park of some sort, whether it be fields or a more passive play area, as they have next to many of our schools. I mean, we do share that with the city and our elementary and our other elementary schools. And so it was, that was a discussion at the time. So to get this and have the acreage have tripled, basically, was quite surprising. I agree with you, the lack of payment for the pipe at this juncture gives me great pause. You started the ball rolling, so.
Well, I will say, I know Ms. Litter and I have had discussions with Alderman Gibson this past week about that opinion taken out of there and getting an invoice to the city so we can be reimbursed.
Okay, I would agree with that.
Spoken to two additional aldermen today that were absolutely in line with that law.
So I think that we're all in agreement that that doesn't help folks in this kind of help.
I will say, my concerns, timeline obviously is a concern. Being able to make solid plans for what happens with Houston High School and future use of that facility and build out is critical to our strategic plan going forward. I was shocked when I opened the picture of the land at Forestville Elementary and saw that the request went all the way up to the parking lot. I it gave me great pause to think that we have completely built out that entire land if we do this agreement, which means there will be no place for a science lab, there will be no place for another classroom or a garden or no exercise walking path, nothing else. Everything we've ever thought of has to have already been done.
Yes.
And nothing new will be eventually be able to happen. So my thought is that I don't have any leaning toward moving forward with exchanging and having 15 acres go to the city.
No. No.
We could certainly discuss with them fewer.
I'd like 5.
I'd like 0. I'd like 0.
I would very much like for the aldermen to discuss it
Yes.
before we come to a decision about are we comfortable with this moving forward or not. We can either request a joint meeting, which I think might be very helpful, or
I was going to bring that up in further business. I think that's an
Well,
excellent idea.
I think the elephant in the room is how the community feels about expanding the water tower. That's the elephant in the room, because it puts us in a very
we're
bad
not water
position.
tower people.
It's not our decision, but
No.
I absolutely,
It's being made our decision.
it's being made our decision, and that puts us in a very extremely tough position. But
Yeah, it
I think the amount of, I don't want to see all of the property that we work so hard to have. And we did talk about the possibilities of future expansion if the need ever arose. I mean, we're not even in the first year yet.
Right.
So it's kind of like, can we wait beyond the first year of school at least before we even consider more than a few acres?
Urgency of the request for the softball field that started 9 months ago, and that urgency is continuing to gain.
And that's the flip side of it, is we need one. We've needed one for decades.
And we inherited that need, but we recognize it, and now it's our responsibility.
Right.
this is one option that's been presented to us. And I think it sounds like everybody would like to have some kind of joint meeting.
I think a joint meeting would be very helpful. Because I don't feel like we've always had a great working partnership with the city, with the BMA, and I think this is something we need to discuss together. And I think we have to have an honest, open discussion about all of this, about moving forward.
One thing, remember too, on the contracts, sometimes lawyers get in the way. And so, I tell clients this all the time, don't always attribute what a party was thinking or saying to what the lawyer wrote, because sometimes lawyers, you know, I mean, I've done it. You get overzealous, you want to protect your client at all costs, and so, you know, you draft something in a manner that the other side sometimes gets mad about, and so, you know, what I would say is, my guess is it's something that can be worked out and then tell the lawyers what to draft, as opposed to letting the lawyers get a hold of something first. Because I don't think that was anybody's intent for it to be perceived as anything other than working together. Now, I'm not commenting on the amount of land or anything like that. I'm just talking about some of the legal, who gets right of first refusal, who gets the final call, you know, all those kind of things. And just like maybe if perhaps the alderman had not approved it yet, just like, you know, the first time when y'all were seeing it, you're going, who put that in? You know, the same thing like I didn't know about repaying on the drain y'all paid for.
Well, to your point, there's been multiple documents that were presented to the city administration that didn't make it past that, so it was our understanding. And I think that those people absolutely need to know what we're asking for, so that they can best decide what they want to do on the flip side of this potential exchange. As it stands right now, I feel like we are brand new at that facility. I spoke with Ms. Landers last week as a member of the site selection committee, and it's really important to me. Not only do we, GMSD, need equitable facilities for our student athletes right now, yesterday, but we also have to look 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, and this land is not going to fall in our lap ever again.
Never again.
We already have it, and it's ours to use for what we need it for. And at the rate our district is expanding and our needs we've seen at the other locations, that is currency. I mean, it's greater than gold at this point to me. I think that it's not something that we can predict, but it's something that we already have. And if we give it up now, we'll never have it again at this location, whatever that may be, 5, 15, whatever that looks like. That will change the dynamic of what that property can be for our district, which is our purview and our responsibility to maintain. So, again, I don't like the fact that the two things are combined at all. I would love to talk about utilizing a piece of our property for possibly a water utilities alternative that's not a tower. I'd be very open to discussing that, but that hasn't been presented to us because the board that would decide that hasn't even decided that officially. They haven't even determined what's best for them. So it's hard to go backwards and say, okay, if at this point we've asked for X, which is park property use, and have not gotten a response.
Yeah, but the decision on whatever facility the city puts on any land that we exchange has nothing to do with us.
Exactly.
And we have,
I would like for them to have that conversation before we decide. And if that's not something that they would do,
Well, they can't have the conversation until they have the land.
well, they've promoted it as if it's a done deal in a lot of open forums, so
Yes, they have.
Well,
that
but
said,
it's,
it
again,
hasn't been, it's not a done deal. Because
again,
we
it's
have to
never been a
decide.
secret.
No, listen, I think everybody's heard it loud and clear. We've just never formally
It's
discussed it.
been discussed
publicly
since-
Until tonight.
it's been
This
discussed.
board has never openly and publicly discussed it until
No,
tonight.
not till now.
So here we are.
Real quick, Ms. Luter, could you do me a favor? Could you just briefly, into the microphone, give an overview of what we've discussed and how we're moving forward? Because some people still say they have missed the conversation. So if you could
Okay.
just briefly give an overview of what we've discussed.
Okay. So there has been a discussion of a desire for the water line reimbursement to be removed from the MOU agreements because that was an agreement made prior to and an outstanding issue. The timeline on the exchange of Houston Park has been requested to be added to the MOU so that we can move forward with a strategic plan that includes that land, a defined timeline. The other question at Forest Hill Elementary on that property remains two pieces of it. Some seem to be willing to discuss a land exchange, but fewer acreage than 15 acres. Others are concerned about releasing any land at this time. Is that fair?
And then we would like a joint meeting.
And we would like a joint meeting of the Board of Education and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to discuss moving forward so that we have on the table the requests that we have made, the requests that have come from the city, and we can all work openly, honestly, and come to an agreement. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
May I be recognized for a moment?
At a work session?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted, we were here to listen and to learn. We've had a 6-year relationship of great esprit de corps. We work together. We work through solutions. We have no issue whatsoever with a separate agreement for the water pipe. Matter of fact, we've been trying to pay that invoice for months, but there's some ownership with that as well. But we're more than willing to work together. We're more than willing to work together on the joint meeting as well. You know, just 2 years ago, we did one of our biggest bond issues the city has ever taken on, and it was to purchase this land. The people purchased this land for specific purposes, and we worked in good faith with different chair people and the superintendent about city needs, and the city needs of public utilities affect the greater good of all of the residents when it comes to resiliency and redundancy and water pressure. You know, it's always a cart in front of the horse type thing. We're working through this. We didn't expect for an agreement tonight, but we have lawyers who've been talking to lawyers, administrators to administrators, elected people to elected people. And so we look forward to working with this school board on this current issue and any issue in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next item on the agenda is land use agreement for Houston Levy Park and land currently on the Forest Hill Elementary School property. I would suggest that land use agreement is a little redundant. So, is there further business?
I was going to suggest meetings. I think that's fantastic. Welcome.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Because we are responding in this case to the newly split document in response to what the city provided us. When we had previously asked just for usage,
Hold on a second, slide over.
is that something that we're still willing to discuss, or do we feel like that ship has sailed?
No, I don't think you should, for our purposes, we want a softball field. We want parking for our kids at
Yes.
the high school.
We do.
Those are our needs as the district. I think what the city was concerned, what they told us they were concerned about, and speaking with them, was we're not going to be able to develop all those fields. We don't want to take fields off their books that they're using for their
Nor do we
activities
want
and
that,
sports
right.
for a
Because
couple
we
of years. Now,
said
one
no.
of those, yes, we want to take one right now. We want to transform it. We want to put a locker room. We want a turf room. We want all that right now. But as far as the other two fields that are there, and the status of the lake and the adjacent property there, that's going to be a slower transition for us. And we want to do a master plan to see what type of facilities do we want there. Do we want a larger indoor turf room for multiple sports? Do we want a long field? Because, lacrosse is becoming a TWSA sport. And so how are we going to provide for those athletes coming on? So for us, I think regardless of what this body decides, and if the city were to give us this land, we would still want to give them some type of assurances that, hey, we're not going to turn dirt on all those fields and take them off the records right off the bat, but we do have one that we want. So I think it is important to have a land usage to say roughly what is our transition. I think Ms. Estes tried to put in there we said 4 years, but we're not tied to that to say,
I
hey,
just made up a number.
Absolutely, we
That-
could,
the city
that-
has 4
just to get
years
it on the
for those
table.
other 2
Okay.
fields, because I know that they're looking at purchasing other land for parks that they could deal with those
They're-
other properties.
They are in the process in the next 12, 18 months of purchasing new park
Yes.
property so that they won't have to use that property. But again, I think in the further discussion that we said, it would be very beneficial if we have a defined timeline in, when we do
Yes,
this,
and I think
when we do this transition.
In that land uses, I thought it did
Yeah.
have 4
it
years.
does talk about,
Yeah.
It does has 4 years in the land
But it was
usage. I
not
think
in the original.
Yes.
Right, no, the original could have gone
Yeah,
on forever.
forever.
right,
And so I put it at 4, but that number
Yeah.
has no I mean,
that's a place to start the
Yeah.
conversation.
I guess where I'm, my, hitching my giddy up here is previous conversations at this table where we have been told that Houston Park would be ours. There were no strings attached. It was going to be ours when they got some parkland. So they're getting new parkland. Why is it all of a sudden now tied to this 15 acres of Forest Hill? That makes no sense to me, other than the fact that they want it for their own usage. And the loss of control of that land behind our school building is trouble. I mean, they could put anything on that without any discussion with us, anything on that. And there is no access point other than over our property.
And that's what I
Same
said.
thing that applies to the park potential.
That's why I
Right,
said
and
I
so-
don't feel comfortable with the park was one of my issues.
I'm not either. And yes,
But
there
I
is
think-
that history of having a park next to our elementary, but we have to look at SES's history. And the reason that is because there was no money for playgrounds and things like that. We've provided a playground for Dogwood. We have that ability to do some of those things. Yes, and it is history, absolutely, but I just.
Well,
But
and I think that's why we
recognizing-
need to meet with the alderman and discuss our concerns so we can come to some kind of compromise.
Or,
And
yes.
I just think we all need to have the opportunity to lay all of our cards on the table and have an open conversation.
I
And
welcome
so
that. I think-
not be separate conversations, individual conversations, social media, whatever. I think that's the only way. And not through lobbying.
I don't get to come.
Pop some popcorn, come on and listen.
Okay. Is there further
Oh,
business?
I just had a couple of things. One, just, this goes back to the parking. We do own the property around the tennis courts. And I've had concerned citizens come to me that there is no parking for people to play tennis. And so I'm just throwing it out to Mr. Kathy for something that we can work on to provide some spaces that are marked so that people can use the tennis courts, or are we going to tell the public they can't use these tennis courts?
So I'll speak to that for sure. If you go back to Houston High School, and they're parked clear around to the softball fields. This has been an item that we've gone back and forth with the city on for quite some time because we were asked to tell the kids not to park back there.
Yeah.
But it's a public park, and if they park back there, it comes down to whether the police are going to enforce, which historically they have not. So it is our property. We found out not too long ago that there was actually an agreement that Shelby County Schools had done with the city for usage of that property that expired in 2017 that we did not know about. So that
It's a moot now.
I know, I was just curious about the wording of that usage agreement. And was it just used,
I have not
what
seen
was
that
in
agree- I haven't
exchange
seen
for
that.
that? What other hidden gems are?
And they just keep popping up.
having said all of that, it is now our property. That agreement has expired. It's ours. So if we could paint spaces all day. The kids are still going to park
Park
in
there.
them, and it's our property. There's not going to be any way to enforce it, I guess is what I'm saying. There's not going to be any way to police it, regulate it, or enforce it, especially since it's our property.
And this is a challenge at the high school right now, if y'all are aware of this. They don't have any place to park. And so I think this year, we had more seniors drive than ever in the past. And I think close to 500 seniors received parking passes. And I've heard it was around 100. I think you heard differently that it was 70, but I heard they did a lottery for the remaining spaces for juniors. And so the majority of juniors don't have a place to park in school. So it's going to be a challenge for us. That's one of those reasons, once again, why do we need land behind and connected to Houston High School? Not
So what am I to tell these people? That they're not going to get a place to park?
Probably.
The other second thing was real quick. I think we probably all got letters from Governor Lee. And so I'm just encouraging everybody to answer those.
Oh, yes.
I was going to ask.
And
actually,
I was
is
going
there
to-
something- Are there some topics we
That
want
we
Well,
want
I
to
was going to
cover.
ask, I had talked to the superintendent about working jointly in putting together some concerns that we all had in this response.
And I think a prime example is what Dr. Park and I were looking at today is they have a new LEA compliance sheet of all the bubbles that we have to check to say, are we compliant to be a state school district? It looks at staffing in the schools, it looks at planning time for teachers. You name it, it is a 5-page document when it used to be a 1-page document to say, yes, we can be a public school. At the same time, they're going to take vouchers to private schools and institutions and not have any of those assurances or not have any of those checklists that will bind them and make it difficult for them to operate. So those are all important things I think that we address with them is just the lack of accountability on the voucher side, and it's not 2 tests, it's not a math and English test, it's the whole list of everything we have to do to be a public school district that makes it difficult for us to operate.
How many special ed students have we had leave this year? Do you know?
I think we were, originally, I think it was 3 that were taking advantage of the IA. I think it dropped to 2.
Okay.
So it is that confirmation.
But we're not being reimbursed for those.
No. And the challenge that we, with any of these, especially with, we've talked about the IA vouchers in the past, is that a lot of our private schools that serve those students will not take all students. And so you could be left with some of your more costly, medically fragile students that are left being served by public schools, while other schools don't have those same issues and challenges we do. So it's a balance that's broken. So all those things I think we could address. I can give you specifics.
Yeah,
on
that'd be
those.
great.
We'd be glad to give you a list.
Okay.
A bullet point list?
Yes,
Yes.
that'd be great. And then we all can add our own concerns and things in there.
We can put it in words.
Yeah. One more question. I know you don't have total number of students
do.
yet
I'll
because
share
things
with
go in and out. Okay, thank you. That was my next
I'll be
question.
glad to throw them up. if
One
you want to
weekend.
talk about it. You want to go to the last slide in my presentation since we've got
Couple
extra
minutes,
time to talk
yeah.
about
Drum
student
roll.
numbers? Yeah. I was scared. There are good pockets and there are some other pockets. Okay, so just so you know, looking at our enrollment, you can see the 2018 is that first column. So at Dogwood Elementary School, we had 934 students. With 4 still opening up, it dropped to 685 students.
And you can tell by
And
the
you
car
can tell
line.
a huge difference in the car line, in the halls, in the cafeteria, and all those spaces.
Truly.
It's dramatically different.
And that's less than what we thought,
Elementary school was
too.
at 800. They're currently at 610. Their capacity is 700. Forest Hill Elementary School, of course, they didn't have enrollment, but they're looking at 550 students. It is built to grow with 815 students. Riverdale Elementary School, their enrollment was 904 students. They're looking at 780. Their capacity is at 800. Riverdale Middle School, and I will define this a little more in detail. They were at 506 students, but remember, this board made a difficult decision, and it was hard. We reduced some of those middle school transfers, specifically in the 6th grade, for non-residents at Riverdale, because we couldn't accommodate them. And we are lucky that we did make that decision, because what we saw is the number of 6th grade students of residents dramatically grew. So even though we reduced some of those non-residents there, they were backfilled by the number of residents. So you don't see a huge change in that middle school number. So we're looking at 506, 500 is the enrollment there. And the capacity is 510 at Riverdale Middle School. Houston Middle School, their enrollment last year was 947. They're up again to 967. We're well over their capacity at 930, but we're starting that process right now with the architects to build that expansion on a Houston Middle School. And then Houston High School was at 1873, and they're at 1933 right now, capacity of 2,100. So where did this, you can go ahead and go to the demographers. Where did this look like across the grade bands for the district? Know that the forecast from the demographer for this year was 2,729, and we were at 2,625. So we were less, and part of that is because, remember he said, when he did his predictions, if you don't change your transfer policies or you don't make any adjustments like zoning or a new school, so I think he did a fairly good job assuming that we have reduced our number of non-resident transfers and opened a new school. At 6 through 8, he projected that we would be at or forecasted we would be at 1476. We were at 1453, so a little bit lower than what he projected for our middle school grade band. And you can see what he forecasted for high school at 1913, and we're at 1933. Overall total enrollment, you can see he forecasted we would be at 6,118, and we're actually at 6,011 students. Now know that it grows during the year. We see students coming in specifically during the school year, so these numbers will go up again, and we'll give you updates. That's one of the reasons that we do 20-day reports, and they're constantly filling out BEP sheets. We are looking at a couple of positions. You know, we always build in 5 growth positions for the district. We've already used one of those at Forest Hill Elementary School. We added a kindergarten teacher before they actually opened the doors there. So before students were assigned to those teachers during that first week of school, you know, they do the shadowing days for those students. We were able to add that teacher so that someone didn't get bonded to a teacher and then have to be switched out of a classroom or bonded to friends. I'd have to look at the total number. I think it bumped it up to 5, but I want to verify that. I think it went from 4 to 5 or 5 to 6. I'll check and see. It's 6, yes, so we're up to 6. At Houston Middle School, we're also looking at a potential position, specifically their Algebra 1 sections, physical science sections. So we're talking about adding a section there. How to do that is going to be the challenge. Without completely overhauling their master schedule and everybody having to get a new schedule. So we're looking at that position right now, so know that we know that those classes are tight. And that's our enrollment picture, and I'll do it again for the public's sake.
Any other further business? We stand adjourned until our business meeting at 6:30.
Welcome. This meeting of the Germantown Municipal School District Board is now in session. If you are here as part of the Citizens to be Heard, I encourage you to go ahead and step outside the main doors and to the left on the table. At the sign-in table, you will find a form, Citizens to be Heard, to fill out. If you will turn that in to Mrs. Subramani, the board secretary, just here, she will add you to the list of people to be citizens to be heard. As we gather tonight, let us open with a moment of silence. Thank you. Ms. Oaf, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? We move to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda. Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Fisher and seconded by Ms. Landers. Ms. Subramani, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Ms. Landers?
Yes.
Ms. Griffith?
Yes.
Ms. Oaf?
Yes.
Chairman Luter?
Yes.
Thank you.
The next item is recognitions and awards. Mr. Manuel.
We keep outdoing ourselves as a school district. And I think that I want to take this opportunity to slow down and really realize the incredible things that our operations department has accomplished over this past summer. The projects that we undertook, $40 million plus in projects this summer, were a daunting task, from the meetings with the architects, planning with the contractors, working with our custodial staff, working with the subcontractors at these sites. It has been a grueling summer for the staff. They almost need a summer after the summer because of what they've had to go through to accomplish these tasks. So just some of the bigger projects, as this board knows, Riverdale, for example, was really a 6-month project. The fact that we took out a boiler chiller system, had to remove huge sections of lead pipe, had to change all the wiring in the ceilings to LED lighting. That was a 6-month project that we really crammed into a 2-month window. And we're thankful to the companies that were working with us, but it took a lot of effort on our staff's part to make sure that these projects happen. So I know that Mr. Cathy, Mr. Law, Mr. Whiteley, Mr. Jones, they spent weekends, they spent nights at these facilities making sure that work was being completed so that we had a representative at those facilities while they were working on those. I can't tell you how incredible the change was, and I know that Mr. Jones, for example, was up there all weekend after Riverdale was completed to make sure that we got all the rooms cleaned and stripped and waxed in a weekend. And it was the point where I was really concerned that we weren't going to be able to get that done, but the fact that they were able to push that project through, and it wasn't perfect when we opened the facility, and we were thankful to the teachers' flexibility, but know that the fact that they were able to have the teachers in those classrooms after seeing how much it was demolished the Friday before, that took a Herculean effort for them to get that accomplished. And then we look at Forest Hill that was happening at the exact same time. The amount of work and hours that it's taken to make sure that we had a school that met our standards and opened on time for our students took tremendous effort from our staff and crew. So tonight, as we are getting ready to open a new school year, I don't want to overlook the work that they completed. So if I could have up Mr. Josh Cathy, Aaron Law, I don't see Mr. Whiteley here, and Mr. Jones. I think we all owe them our thanks and a round of applause for all the work that they've done this past summer. Ms. Luder, you want to come down for a picture? Come on here, slide on in. And I think everyone would agree that besides Riverdale needing to be painted now that we can see it with the new lights, that's coming. Yes, that's coming. The changes we are making in Germantown schools just in the past 5 years have been incredible. I know we've got a Forest parent here or two. Hopefully y'all appreciated that it is a special school. It is something incredible for our students, for our teachers, for our community. So we will keep putting our brand on our other facilities, updating those and building things that really serve our families. But it does take a lot of people time away from their families. Miss Renee, thank you for giving us your husband. Because they do. They're spending nights, they're spending weekends to make sure that these projects get completed to our standards. And with that, that concludes our recognition and awards.
Thank you, Mr. Manuel. We move into reports with our TLN update. Ms. Griffith?
Thank you, Chairman Luder. On Friday, June 28th, Ms. Oaf, Ms. Fisher, Ms. Landers, and I attended the TSBA Summer Law Institute in Jackson, Tennessee. We heard a legislative update, which included discussions of bills that had been passed and had not. A couple of bills of interest that did not pass were Senate Bill 295HB or House Bill 177, which was proposing the ability for interest on fund balance to be applied towards the balance of the account itself. Another bill interest which did not pass, or bill rather of interest that did not pass, was Senate Bill 330, House Bill 1244, which proposed an increase from 30 minutes to 45 minutes twice weekly for PE in elementary schools. That was to try to catch up with the new laws by the state. Newly passed legislation that we have been monitoring closely were some of the following. Student growth data, Senate Bill 784, House Bill 928, where the legislature has made the permanent change to the 10 ready data where a teacher can apply up to 35% if it will increase the score to make it a high score for the teacher designation. Special education law, this was one that I think several of us received emails about throughout the spring, where there was some language change, removing the word gifted from the definition of special education, but instead just taking it to the broader rules and regulations terms that are used in that same statute. So nothing really changed other than the language itself. Something that I thought was very exciting that we learned a little more about was the career aptitude assessments. SB 809 and House Bill 953 may now be offered where career aptitude assessments may be offered to sixth graders. So whereas we might have in middle school done that in 7th or 8th grade, they want some lower level middle schoolers to have that opportunity, so that might kind of help them plan their schedules accordingly. Dual enrollment, which is very popular in our district, created the governor's investment in vocation education. You all probably from here on out hear us refer to that as the GIVE Act. This increases state funding for dual enrollment courses from 2 to 4 if the course is in a high-need workforce-related program. So that could be a variety of things in our community, whether it be health sciences or computer type things. We continue to stay informed on legislation pertaining to vapor products, as those policies are continually evolving, literally all the time. Finally, ESA legislation is still trying to iron out the reimbursement piece to affected districts. As we know, our district, as a municipal district, which relies heavily on funding from the Shelby County schools, is something that we're really paying close attention to. We are hosting a ribbon-cutting dinner at the new Forest Hill Elementary School. I'm sure we'll talk about that more this evening, but I present it in this particular report because we have invited several of our esteemed legislators to come and attend and see our gym. And we look forward to spending that time with them outside of Nashville, but here showing them our wares.
Thank you, Ms. Griffith. The chairman's report this evening, members of the board attended the training the legislative law meeting, members of the board attended a joyous ribbon cutting for children, teachers, and family at Forest Hill Elementary School and helped with carpool as school began this fall. And we want to express our particular appreciation to the teachers and the staff at all of the schools in the district. As Mr. Manuel alluded to, every school in the district, with the exception of Houston Middle, had major work done this summer. And we are all aware that over the summer, some of your cheese got moved. And we appreciate everything that the staff, the faculty, everybody at the schools, parents included, has done to ensure that school began smoothly and students remained everyone's focus. So the chairman's report concludes with, school has begun. Yay. Financial report, Mr. Jones.
Okay, you have the financial reports for the month ending June 30, 2019, which is the last month of our fiscal year. First note that these are preliminary numbers, as the 18-19 books will stay open until the end of August. And with it being the end of the fiscal year, I thought I would just focus on ending fund balances or reserves. In the school operating fund, before any commitments, the reserves or fund balance totaled $19.1 million. We have various commitments for capital projects, technology devices, and also looking at our commitment for the 1920 budget as far as the use of reserves. Commitments are basically purchase orders that were carried forward from the 18-19 school year to 1920. And after those commitments and uses in 1920, we have a net reserve amount of $11.7 million. In the Federal Projects Fund, no fund balance is a reimbursable program. In the Cafeteria Fund, fund balance or reserves of $33,000. Capital projects, $1.7 million. Health insurance, $2 million. OPEB trust, $2.8 million. And our fixed asset account group, $93.7 million. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Manuel, the superintendent's report.
We will start with the majority of the presentation is really going to be some detailed looks at some of the capital work that we've been talking about that we completed over the summer. We would still like to, I know the boards have different schedules, but if there are any of these that you want to go visit or see, just let us know a time, and we would be glad to take you all through some of the schools to see some of the finished projects. With that, Mr. Gathie, start us off.
I know that our crew got recognized again, but I want to reiterate my thanks to Aaron Law, to Irvin Jones, and to Greg Whiteley. We all took 3 weekends apiece and worked them, and there wasn't a holiday that these gentlemen didn't work. July 4th, Memorial Day, Father's Day, you name it, throughout the summer. These gentlemen were working because they buy into the mission of our district, and that is that we do what's best for kids. So opening school is best for kids. So I'll start the way Ms. Luter finished. We opened school, and that in itself was a mammoth task. I'll take you through some of the capital projects that we did this summer. We had roughly $41 million of work completed, just a little over $41 million. So I'll take you through those capital projects, and we got some nice visuals to go with them. So one of the projects we completed was Dogwood Elementary School's repainting. And just like we do on so many of our projects, we engaged our stakeholders at the school level to talk about color selection and talk about all of the different things. What we finished on was different colors for different halls, stripes in the halls, and we finished in the classrooms with 1 accent wall per classroom. This was a $125,000 project. It paid for out of our GMSD general fund. But it always makes a big difference at the school when you get a nice fresh coat of paint. Our long-term goal is to get to the point where we're painting 1 school a year. Every summer we're painting a school, and we're on a cycle in that regard. At Dogwood Elementary School, we also did a long overdue project that this board made a priority to renovate bathrooms. those bathrooms are a long sight from what they were in the past. So we now actually have real stalls. We have nice decorative decor on the interior, nice new sinks, new soap dispensers, new bottle filling stations in the restroom. And that's a project that we are very proud of, and we hope to keep continuing on that pace in the future. We also did some major enhancements over the past year to Dogwood Elementary's outdoor play spaces. So we added the new playground. I think the kids barely got on the last week of school, or pretty close to it. And then we also had the new outdoor basketball court that we put in. That area was in desperate need to be renovated. So Dogwood's coming back to all new play spaces that they can utilize, and you see some nice action photos of the kids that are actually getting to enjoy. And that's really what refills our cup, is when we see that these projects that we get to do, we see the kids actually getting to enjoy the spaces. So how that broke down for the playground project, the PTO did fundraisers to pay. They ended up paying $25,000 for that project, and then the school district kicked in out of the general fund for $125,000 to pay for that new playground. The outdoor basketball court was a $90,000 expenditure. Painting we talked about already was $125,000, and we actually used the Shelby County Commission allotment that we get from them for capital projects to pay for the bathroom renovations that happened at Dogwood this summer. At Farmington, we did the same project that we were doing at Dogwood, and with the bathroom renovations, it's the exact same project, but with a few different elements to it. We did repurpose a couple of spaces over by the PE offices in order to give them more flexibility and usability. So you can see the same features with the water filling stations. We had space that was just not being utilized well and that wasn't designed for our need. Old showers and space of that nature that we renovated. They can now be used for better offices, storages. If we ever got in a pinch, we could use it for classroom space if we needed to in the future. So it gives us more flexibility for the space. And we also did remove the 4 old portables that were there that were the last 4 after we got rid of the 23 at Riverdale that were left over from Shelby County Schools. That was all paid for with Shelby County Commission funds, as you saw in the last slide. Houston High School security improvements have been completed. That's a good picture of the new door that goes directly into the main office. The board's well aware, as is the public, that in the past you just had that front entrance that you walked in and then you were just into the halls and you could go. So now you have a secure entrance that goes directly into the office to be checked in. And that is completed, but that wasn't the only thing that we did at Houston High School to enhance the security. We also put in fencing in the courtyard area as well as between the main building and A buildings, so that now that campus really can be a secure campus where the kids can enter and exit the buildings, but the campus is still secure from within. So those projects are completed, and here's our unexpected project at Houston High School that we had. There's a video of the water flooding into the orchestra pit in the auditorium the night of the flood damage that occurred. So I thought that was nice to show the board and the public a visual of what we were dealing with flood damage at Houston High School. There's where we are on the gym floor right now. They're finishing sanding the wood, and after that, really the next step is artwork, and then that gym will be usable again. So we're not far from being able to give Houston High School their gymnasium back. We did have to put down new carpet in the auditorium as well. And one of the things that you're not going to see in the pictures, there was major cleanup that had to be done as a result of the flood damage at Houston High School. So here you see some of the reason and some of the issues that we had, but you can see the water coming down, where it's coming in. There was a full-size tree that actually jammed the culvert that ran underneath the area that you can see in the visuals there. And that didn't help. That contributed to the backup of water at Houston High School. So that was our unexpected capital project that we got this summer that we worked hard towards completing as quickly as we could to give Houston High School back the spaces that they need. So the security improvements, that was a joint venture where we used funds from the city of Germantown that were allocated towards security improvements, and we also used some GMSD general fund. We also are underway with the field house. I have been getting a lot of questions and trying my best to answer them. The field house is off to a slow start for a good reason. All of the electrical that feeds the football field runs underneath the area that we have to do soil work and rip trees out in order to put the field house up. So we're fairly certain when we do that work, we're going to destroy the electrical that runs underneath. So we have a work order in with MLGW, and we're working towards getting temporary power run to the football field, disconnecting what's underground, and then we can begin tree work, soil work, and we can't begin. Well, it's not a good time to kill power to the football field. So we are waiting on temporary power to be run, and we're going to do that and transition that in a way where it won't affect operations on the football field. Riverdale, Mr. Manuel said it was a 6-month project that we did in 2 months. There was so much involved in that project. We had brand new rooftop units that we brought in. We had to demo out all of the piping above ceiling that carried water from the boiler and chiller to the classrooms where the unit handlers created heat or cool. We demoed out all the ceiling tile, put back all new ceiling tile, all new grid, all new LED lights, and it's a really long needed renovation. One of the big challenges we had at Riverdale was you couldn't just transition back and forth between heat and cold. So on days where we have 40-degree lows in the morning and 80 degrees in the afternoon, it's either hot or cold, and there was nothing we could do about it. So now we can. And we did the PE gym as well. So if you are familiar with Riverdale's PE gym, there was a lot of that fire protection stuff that a lot of people confuse with another substance that I won't mention on the ceiling. That is now gone and completely renovated, so it has a much nicer look inside that PE gym. And so that project was a mammoth, long overdue project that was completed for Riverdale. How do we pay for it? The City of Germantown funded that project to the tune of $2.5 million, and the Germantown Municipal School District covered the other $2.5 million out of the general fund. The district office administrative building, I think I had a question from a board member tonight if we're having our last meeting in here. No, I think we'll be back in here in September and possibly October. The way construction is tracking right now, I think we'll finish up around fall break. Mr. Manuel's more optimistic than I am, but I think mid-October is probably about the time that we think we'll be able to move in, but we're near in the dry. The roof is on, the HVAC units are on, glass is there, so we're really, really, really close to having that building fully in the dry. On the inside, there's a lot of trades, as you can see, that have already begun. So we're not far off, and we're really excited to be able to move into that building as well. Progress video. And as you can see, I mean, this was another one that we really crammed 1.5 to 2 years of construction into 1 year in order to get this building up, and it was right into the 11th hour that we were able to open school, and we're so proud and glad that we were able to.
I think it's interesting to see how much rain there was during that construction.
And so there's some of the interior spaces. I know all of our board members have been through there, and we would like to do what we did last year. We invited the board as well as the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to tour and look at the improvements that were done to our schools over the summer. It's one thing to see it in pictures, but it's another thing to walk it and see how it affects our stakeholders and the kids that get to utilize the facility. That project was paid for $27 million from the City of Germantown. And Germantown Municipal School District pulled $3 million from reserve and is paying for that project as well out of the general fund. So it was a whirlwind of a summer. We're so proud that we were able to open school and make improvements to our facilities. But I also want to mention something, and it's important, I think. I know a lot of love got given to the operations department, and they certainly do deserve a lot of love, but I also like to point out, I know it's cliched that it takes a village, and I'm not going to go through everything that everyone did, but especially with opening this new elementary school, it really took everyone, from school board to district leadership. All of our cabinet members and all of our team really played a role, and there were so many different things that so many different members of our team did in order to make this building what it is. So yes, operations certainly drove a lot of the construction piece inside, but we didn't do it alone, not by any stretch of the imagination. It was a total team effort, from zoning to staffing and human resources to FF&E selection to committee work for land selection and design, FF&E selections right down to the library books. special education equipment for the preschool classroom, the finance and budget side of planning for a new school to make sure that we're not overextending ourselves and that we have good financial plans in place, kitchen equipment, nutrition, new employees coming in. Every single person at the district played a role, and I can't stress that enough, as well as our school board. So we all should be proud of this building that we were able to open, and it was a total team effort. Another item here is the district-wide security improvements. So we did a lot of work and are a lot better off on our camera footage and cell phone boosters as far as just having footage of our schools. And I'll be honest with you, those added cameras really came in handy, not just for security, but when we were making our insurance claim for the flood damage at Houston High School, to be able to cover the damages and be able to show proof of where the water came in, how it came in, when it came in. So it's a security improvement, but it has other functions as well. And I think that concludes the capital improvements / superintendent report. Thank you.
So I'll conclude. Thank you, Mr. Cathy. And I'd like to echo his sentiment that it did take a lot of effort from a lot of staff, whether we were talking about the FF&E, we're talking about textbooks, we're talking about all the equipment in the schools and staffing to make sure that we had the right numbers. And I think these enrollment numbers show that all the effort that we put into looking at our transfer policies, playing those enrollment games and dealing with the puzzle pieces to look at how many kids are at each school means that we moved conservatively and moved carefully to make sure that we weren't having to deal with reductions in staff or overstaffing at our schools. And I think we did a really good job of trying to predict those. So just a few of the updates, and we reviewed these during the work session, but I'll do them for the public. Dogwood Elementary School's 2018 enrollment was in August, 934 students. You know, it grows through the year, but we always try to be consistent and use that first 20-day report numbers for review. This year, they had 685 students at the end of our first week of school. Know that school is built for a capacity of 790 students, so we feel that it has made a dramatic difference in the length of time in the car line, the students in the hallways, space in the cafeteria, space in the gym spaces, so it's had an impact on the school. Farmington Elementary School last year had 800 students. They are looking at 610 students after the first week of school. They have a capacity of 700 students in that school. Forest Hill Elementary School, of course, is new, so it didn't have an enrollment, but they are opening with 550 students, and it is built with a capacity for 815 students. Riverdale Elementary School, when we look at the grades K through 5 grade bands, know that last year they had 904 students. This year they had 780 students in those K through 5 grade bands, and the older building that we just renovated and the kindergarten building that's next to it, know that those can accommodate 800 students. When we look at the new expansion at Riverdale in grades 6 through 8, it is last year had 506 students. It's opening with 500 students and has a capacity for 510 students at the Riverdale Middle School addition. At Houston Middle School, last year their enrollment was 947. At the beginning of the school year, this year they're opening with 967. Know that we're over capacity there by 930. And at Houston High School last year they were at 1873. This year their enrollment is 1933, and it has capacity for 2100 at Houston High School. So how did this fare with some of the demographer's projections? And know that we've kind of altered some of the things that he based his projections on. One of his stipulations was that if you don't change transfer policies, if you don't rezone, if you don't add a new school. So even with all those things taken into account, he was pretty close in his predictions of how the city and district would grow with their numbers. So know that he was forecasting that this year we would have an enrollment of 2729 in the K through 5 grade bands, and we had an enrollment of 2625. Really close. In 6 through 8, he forecasted that we would have an enrollment of 1476, and we were at 1467 in our 6 through 8 grade bands. Once again, he was taking into account residents and non-residents, so a really close forecast. And I think that was 5 years ago now that we had that. In 9 through 12, he projected 1913, and we were at 1933. So overall, our district at the beginning of the school year was at 6,025 students, and he forecasted that we would be at 6,118 students. So we feel optimistic about our city and district that we're going to continue to grow in our schools, and we're optimistic about the great things that we're doing for students. And with that, that concludes my superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Manuel. I want to take just a moment of personal privilege and thank Ms. Betsy Landers especially for representing the board both in site selection and in design and planning of Forest Hill Elementary. It is a beautiful school, and thank you. We move into the time of citizens to be heard, and by policy, I read the instructions for citizens to be heard. If there are additional people who wish to be heard, please submit your citizens to be heard sign up to Ms. Subramani, who is just here in the blue. If you don't have a sheet, they are available just outside the chamber to your left on a table. I have 2 people for citizens to be heard. GMSD, by its policy, allows persons to address the board during citizens to be heard section of its agenda, but only within certain guidelines. Tennessee law makes no specific provisions for the participation of the public at school board meetings. Thus, there is no inherent or legal right of citizens to make comments during a school board meeting. Prior to making your remarks, you must state your name, address, and the subject of your presentation. The chair would remind you that if there are several persons who are intending to express the same sentiment, GMSD board rules require that you designate one spokesperson to speak for your position. If you do not do so and the chair determines that comments made are cumulative, the chair will direct the speaker to cease their remarks. Individuals addressing the board shall address their remarks to the chair. Speakers will not be permitted to engage in gossip, make defamatory comments, or use abusive or vulgar language. In accordance with GMSD policy SB 1.404, remarks will be limited to 3 minutes unless time is extended by the board or otherwise reduced by the chairman to reflect the number of citizens to be heard. TCA 39-17-306 provides that it is a Class B misdemeanor to intentionally prevent or disrupt a school board meeting. Please be advised that any individual who is disruptive or does not adhere to the aforementioned rules will not be permitted to continue or make their remarks at this meeting. This evening we do have 2 individuals that have indicated their desire to address the board, and you will have 3 minutes to do so. And the first is Brian Curry. Mr. Curry, I will begin my timer when you have finished stating your name, your address, and the purpose of your talk.
Okay, let me get my timer synced up with you here. My name is Brian Curry, 9321 Hollow Creek Cove, Germantown, and I'm here basically speaking on the land swap and speaking on behalf of many of my neighbors who could not be in attendance. Per Merriam-Webster.com, to extort is literally to wrench something out of someone. Extortion is a mainstay of organized crime. Just as the school bully extorts lunch money from the smaller kids in exchange for not beating them up, thugs extort protection money from business owners with threats of violence, end quote. How is what is going on here with a land exchange not extortion? This is what you would expect to see in Chicago, not Germantown. On June 12, 2018, I was called to City Hall to meet with the mayor and Bo Mills, the director of public works. The meeting was held in the mayor's conference room. He sat at the end on the right, Mills sat across from me, and we had the meeting in the conference room down the hall. In this meeting, they attempted to sell me on why we had to have a water tower on this exact spot. After a lengthy and very unproductive discussion, I reminded the mayor that the property was titled to the Germantown Board of Education. At this point, he folded his hands together, his face got red, and said, "The board is not going to buck me on this." I'll never forget it. I had just pulled a petition to run for the school board and was in complete disbelief of the sheer audacity to make such a statement. For the record, I'm willing to submit to a polygraph should anyone question the credibility of this account. If the city needed this land so badly for this water tower, why didn't they carve out what was needed when the land was purchased? Why not clearly disclose to the citizens what the intent was all along? In our area, very few people have children attending GMSD. This was not presented at the zoning appeals, planning, design review, or the BMA, and that would have been the only way for most of them to know, aside from me sending emails saying, hey, this is coming. I attended the Board of Zoning Appeals in September of 2017 and spoke in favor of the plan at the time, giving the information that I had. That is now a move I deeply regret. Our neighborhood didn't get a choice on being chosen for the school site. We didn't ask for the administration building, we didn't ask for the road to be widened, and we didn't ask for the runoff from the construction site after a heavy rain. Yet somehow it's fair for us to completely bear the burden of the softball field and the lack of parking at Houston High. Some politicians serve up pizza and like to talk about all that's good in Germantown. It's past time that the leaders in this city recognize that the engine driving the city is you, the school system, the men and women of GMSD. That's the good. I've not met one person who moved here because we have a AAA bond rating. The city administration cannot be allowed to continue to act as if you are a department of the city subject to their will. If you can't tell already, the city has already predetermined the outcome on this issue. Is the mayor correct that you aren't going to buck him on this? Is the best thing for the students at FHES to give up land, leaving no room for expansion, and having a 170-foot, 250,000-gallon water tower installed? I ask you to please do the right thing for the school and for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Curry. The second person who has submitted a citizens to be heard is Tony Nygren. Ms. Nygren, if you'll state your name, your address, and your subject, then I will start your time.
Well, first I wanted to tell you how awesome Post Road is. We are enjoying it, and I did appreciate seeing Mr. Mayo rolling up his sleeves and helping in Harlan last week. Thank you. It was a little chaotic, but we made it through. Now I'm here to speak in opposition of this land use change that was discussed at the work session. Once again, it appears as though city interests are asking me to overlook our children's safety and their interests. While I understand the need for a softball field, I don't think the school board should be involved in exchanging existing school property to the city, especially knowing that GMSD will have no control of the roads once the city takes over. I was told on a phone conversation with Judge Kathy last spring that if the city is granted the property, that GMSD will no longer have any control over it. If you look at some of the other local water towers, they are now being used as cell towers, and this is a problem that I felt requested. In addition to the cell tower concern, I believe a water tower would be a safety hazard to Houston Metropolitan line at River Run. There is no such thing as an earthquake-proof water tower, and no guarantee of what will happen when that major earthquake occurs. In Shelby County, Kentucky, a much smaller water tower than the one being considered collapsed a few years ago. It flooded the town and caused extensive damage. Citizens described it as a tsunami-type wave of water taking everything in its path. Windows were blown out, doors were pushed through, and siding was torn off as the force of water ripped through the roof. Is that really what we want to worry about our elementary school children experiencing? As a parent, I am disappointed to have to voice my concerns to you again. I don't want to find my children or any children in a school that will be a potential danger to them. They're mandated to be there, and we need to make the best decisions for their best interests. Some members of the city, a water tower or other public utilities will not benefit Forest Hill Elementary and will in fact create other possible hazards. Some members of the city have demonstrated a lack of concern for the health and safety of our school children as they continue to advance technologies and city growth. This should be a huge. Sadly, this is paying for city fund network expansion. If the softball field is needed, the city should be able to transfer it to GMSD without any overreturn. Our city should realize that GMSD is what makes Germantown safe for everyone. There are plenty of other open spaces along Winchester that this tower will benefit needed. Please do not let the city determine what you do with our school property, because this property will be needed in the future. Please do not put the needs of one school over the safety of another. And lastly, please be an advocate to all of our schools and all of the children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nygren. That concludes our citizens to be heard section of the meeting. We move to approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion? The items on the consent agenda are item 8A, approval of the minutes, 8B, annual review revision of policies, second reading. Annual review revision of policies, first reading. Miscellaneous fiscal year 2019-20 budget amendments numbers 1 and 2. School fees and activity costs for the 2019-20 school year.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and by Ms. Landers and seconded by Ms. Oaf. Ms. Subramani, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Ms. Landers?
Yes.
Ms. Griffith?
Yes.
Ms. Oaf?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Chairman Luter?
Yes.
Thank you.
We move to board action items. The first item is item 9A, school audit contract 2019-20. Mr. Jones?
We ask the board's approval of the school activity fund audit for the year 2019-20 with Watkins Uberall be approved with a total fee of $17,000.
Is there a motion?
I move to approve the contract with Watkins Uberall to perform the school audit, school activity fund audit for the 1920 fiscal year.
Second.
The motion has been made by Ms. Fisher and seconded by Ms. Oaf. Is there any discussion?
And Ms. Landers.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was in stereo.
Right,
Ms.
it was.
Griffith.
It was surround sound.
Is there any discussion? Are you ready to vote? Ms. Subramani, please call the roll.
Ms. Griffith?
Yes.
Ms. Oaf?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Ms. Landers?
Yes.
Chairman Luter?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next item is item 9B, stop-loss insurance renewal for 2019-20. Ms. Stratton.
The GMSD HR department is recommending American Fidelity as our stop-loss insurance carrier for the 2019-20 school year for consideration. We need stop-loss insurance to help manage those claims that are catastrophic or could be catastrophic in nature. For our employees that receive medical insurance claims up to $115,000, our stop-loss insurance will kick in and reimburse the district for any future claims that may occur throughout the year.
Is there a motion?
I move to approve American Fidelity as the carrier for the stop-loss insurance renewal for the year 2019 through 2020. Second.
The motion has been made by Ms. Griffith and seconded by Ms. Oaf. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Subramani, please call the roll.
Ms. Oaf?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Ms. Landers?
Yes.
Ms. Griffith?
Yes.
Chairman Luter?
Yes.
Thank you.
That concludes the board action items for this evening. I have two announcements. One is that the open house for the public for Forest Hill Elementary School is this coming Saturday, August the 24th, from 12 until 2 p.m. Come and enjoy tours and see this incredible school that we've said so much about. Also, the next board meeting is September the 16th with work session prior. The board meeting will occur at 6:30 and we will be in this location. Is there any further business? Seeing none, we stand adjourned.
Thank you.